Hello and welcome to this lecture, continuing on in our web architecture lecture series. We have in this lecture we want to create a resource. We will cover in the process of doing that validation, displaying error messages, and also how to delete a resource. So that way that'll complete our CRUD. No. We'll have done create, read, and deletes. So the updating will be reserved for the next lecture. All right, but this will be plenty for us for now. And so what I'd like to do is get back to the example that we were looking at, our Friends app, where we had a listing of friends, and then I can go view detail and then link back to the friends list. So what I'd like to do now is be able to create a new friend and add those, or make a friend. So let me jump into the code, because I think that'll be kind of get things going. This is what we had before. In our index, we have our listing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a create button up here. So I'm going to leverage that Spectre CSS framework that I incorporated. So just by adding this class, I can create a link. And I want to route it. So remember that route helper, and we can route it to friends, create. So if I save that, hit refresh, we have this button. Okay, so let me do a quick reminder. Remember, this route helper leverages some routing conventions, and this friends create doesn't come out of nowhere. It has very important meaning. It's a convention, right? We did that resourceful route in the router that generates these routes for us. I didn't hard code them or anything. It generates them for us. So if we follow these conventions, it's going to help us a lot. So that link is linking to friends create, which is a GET request to the friend controller, the create action. Okay, so that's just a reminder that we're following those conventions. Now if I click on this, okay, nothing happens. We haven't, if we go back to our controller and go to create, notice it's just empty. So when we generated this resourceful controller, it just gave us this empty template, but we can fill it in to be more meaningful for us. So let's go ahead and do that. Because what we want to do is notice what we did up here for index. We returned a view to a template, and so we need to do the same thing. So I'll go ahead and just add it here. And we're not going to be passing anything to that for now. So view friends create. And then let me go over here and go to remember we have a friends directory and then all of our sub-templates in there. So I'm going to create a create.blade.php. And I just want to see if this works. So create, just to make sure our routing is working correctly. So I'll refresh, go to create. And so that lets us know that we've actually went to our file correctly. And so maybe I'll just stay here for now, because now what we need to do is we need to build out a form that allows someone to enter first name, last name, age, and so on. So we need to build this out for a few minutes. And so remember, we need to extend the layout so that we can inherit the CSS, the structure of the whole page, and we just get that for free. So we need to extend layout. And then we also need to define a section called content. And so again, a reminder for that, if I go back to my layout, so when I say extends layout, that actually literally is referencing a file name, and which we have defined layout.blade.php, and then this at section content right here on line 13, the layout, this says yield whatever section is defined with content, stick it right in that spot. And so that's just a reminder of what that's doing. And so I can go back here again, create form goes here, refresh, and there I've already inherited the title. Create form goes here. Things just look a little differently because we've inherited those styles. Okay, cool. So let's continue to build this out. And so let me just get some markup in here. So bear with me while I kind of get this stuff going. And h3, make a friend. And then so I've looked up these styles, but you can look them up in Spectre too. I might as well point you to it. Oh no, never mind. Yeah, if you just go to that Spectre site, it'll give you an example of a form that you can start putting together. So I'll do another one of these for last name. And then I just need an input for these as well. Oh no, we'll leave that off. All right, so there's that so far. Let's just see what we have. All right, so that's coming together nicely. So the next thing we need to do is we need to do an age. And so instead of just doing like a free form open-ended text box, I decided to create like a select list, like a drop down of choices. And so the way I'm going to do that is with there's a select option in HTML. And also another thing is I don't want to hard code, like if I want to do 18 to 100, I don't want to hard code that many options to fill up my markup. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dynamically generate that, and so that it just generates the options for us. So I'm going to go do a for each. And we'll do a range 18 to 100 as age option. for each. Okay, and so then from here, I can create this option tag, and its value is going to be dynamically generated age option oh whoops yeah, that goes in there, and then we're also going to do dynamically display that. So let's see what that looks like. Cool. Yeah, that looks really good. I forgot to put a label on here. So, but I do want to show you that this generated that list from 18 to 100. But if I didn't dynamically do that, I would have had to hard code all of these options. And I didn't want to hard code it, so that's why I dynamically generated it. So let's get a label for age. So that should look better, and it does. Okay, so this doesn't do anything yet, right? We're just kind of making it look decent. So in order to make it actually submit these values to our controller, we have to put these inputs into what's called a form. And so I'm going to wrap this whole thing in a form, but in doing so, we need to talk about a few issues. So let's go ahead and generate that. So we're going to set up the method to be a post. And so remember, that's an HTTP verb for create. So this is where it's all coming together. All those HTTP verbs we've been talking about, those CRUD actions we've been talking about, and then tying them together. We're actually creating a new friend. So we're going to use the post method. Action says, well, where do you want me to send this? Where do you want me to send this data? Well, we're going to send it a route. Right? And the route's going to be friends.store. So store is the actual place in the controller which is going to receive this information, and then we can do some database things from there. Make sure I put this in the right spot. So reminder, friends store. Let's go look real quick. So friends store right here. So it's doing nothing right now, but this is where we'll be submitting the form, and we can get the data from here. So we'll do that in a minute. Okay, what else here? That's looking good. Oh, we need like a submit button. So I'm going to go ahead and create another little section here for our submit stuff. So this will be a special type of button called submit, and that's just an HTML standard. We'll make it look a certain way. Store friend, and then also we're gonna want to give somebody an option. You know, if they don't want to actually create a new friend, they can cancel and just head back to the list page. So that's just kind of a nice thing that I like to add. We'll send them back to friends index. All right, let's see what this looks like. So that adds the submit button and then a cancel, which should take us there, and it did. So that round trip is working fine. So now we can hang out here. So I should be able to fill this out. But I have a 419 page expired. Well, what does 419 mean? P status code 419. It says not part of the HTTP standard, but 419 says is an authentication timeout, or some sort of authentication hasn't expired or has expired. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if there's anything more informational here. It's not even part of the HTTP spec, so. But it is meaningful. It is a client error. So a request contains bad syntax or cannot be fulfilled. That's important. All right, I think that's more the generic part. Any of these 400 type errors. And so what that basically means is that we're trying to submit a form to the server in an unauthenticated or invalid manner. And so what we have to do, what Laravel provides for us to make our application more secure. So I'm bringing up the word security. So what we're basically doing is trying to submit an insecure information to our server, and we don't want that. We don't want anybody just to create a form and try to submit to our server. We want our server to acknowledge and recognize that this form that we're submitting is valid. And so the way that Laravel handles that is by creating this nice little helper called CSRF. Okay. And I just want to make an acknowledgement here. So I'm going to refresh. Hello. Let me just make sure I name things here correctly. First name, last name. Okay, I think things look good. Hello world. Okay, we didn't get that error. Now nothing's happening because we're not handling the data yet, but we're not getting that error. Okay, so what's going on behind the scenes is if I view source on this, that little @CRSF injects this little token submission, this little token value right here. And this little token is like a secret between our form and our server. And so they can only communicate with each other. So if someone else tries to submit to our server, they can't do it. Okay, they can't do it because they don't have the secret token. And Laravel generates that for us only if we add that CRSF. So that's super, super handy. Very important for working with forms in your Laravel apps. So something you don't want to miss. Plus it won't even work. So it's just something you got to do anyway. All right, so I think now we're ready to capture this information in our controller. So one thing I want to note here first is that I want to do what's called, there's a DD, it's called dump and die. So PHP will run the code up until this spot, and it will display any information that you hand to it and just stop the application. It's kind of like a debugger statement, kind of. But I'm going to do a DD on request. Notice this store function hands us this request object. And so I just want to inspect it. I just want to see what's there. All right, I'm going to save that, refresh over here, and then try to maybe just change this for the heck of it. And we should get a dump and die listing inspection of what is in that request variable. So there's some arbitrary things, path info, request URI, things like that. What I want to look at is the request object and the parameters. And I want you to notice there's that token I was talking about. That's that secret handshake between our form and the server and the controller. But then we also have the values from our form. And with those values now, we can actually do things. So let's go back again. Let me leave one of these blank, change that, and see what we get again. Parameters. So this time, look at last name is null, first name is hello, and then our updated age value is 29. So with that information, we know how to take values and we know how to create eloquent models that actually interact with our database. So we need to handle some more things first though, like some validation. We don't want these values to be null or empty. So we need to handle that. So let me get rid of this. And what I want to do now is I want to set up a validation, and Laravel has some really nice, powerful validation library built in. We will just start scratching the surface, and we'll probably use it more and more as we go forward. So let me define, I'm going to create a variable called validated data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that request variable and I'm going to validate it. And what this validate method takes is it takes an associative array as an argument. Takes an associative array as an argument, and what we do is we give it rules for the request variables that come in. So we know we have first name, and we want that to be required. We have last name. We want that to be required. And then we have age, which we want that to be validated as an integer. So what's cool is that Laravel has other validations like minimum size, max length, min length. You can, if you have email address, there's all these built-in validations that make your life easier. So before you go and start writing your own, crazy code to do your own validation, make sure you look up the built-in ones first, because it will probably save you a lot of time. Okay, cool. So this chunk of code here will do some basic validation for us, but we haven't actually saved our friend yet. So what I'm gonna do now is do an app friend create, and I'm gonna hand it this validated data, right? So, because by the time it gets to this spot, we'll know whether the data is bad or not, and then the friend create will actually know what to do with that data, whether it's good or bad. If it's good, it saves it. If not, then we get sent back to our create page with some error messages. So if it is successful, we just want to return and redirect to our index page. With a success, kind of happy, friend was created successfully. So this will be our, everything was valid and created. So then we'd be good to go. All right, so this should be enough to make us halfway dangerous here. So let me go back to my browser refresh. And actually, let's see if it creates one. So hello world store friend. And it did. Sweet. So we have a new friend there. We can show detail on that friend, ID 12. Cool. So let's go look at a bad scenario where it's empty and I try to store a friend. What happened? See, nothing happened. But it did send me back here. So to me, that's saying there's an error. But we wouldn't know unless we displayed the error messages. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go back to our create. And up in the, let's display error messages here. So if we get back this errors variable, if there's any errors, then we want to display them. And this toast error, that's built into that Spectre CSS library. And so what we want to do is we want to for each over the errors, so we can grab all the errors. And then we just want to print each one out. Cool. So notice, so we do a condition here. So if there's any errors, display the errors. If there's no errors, then this doesn't happen at all. This is not even in our markup. We don't have to worry about it being displayed or anything. So it only happens if there's an error. So let's go back here. Refresh. All right, now let me try to store a friend now. Boom. Now we get this nice little error message. If I fill in the first name and not the last name and try to store a friend, then it only displays that error message, and vice versa. Right, first name, last name, or first name is required. So it looks like we're getting some good error messages here. One thing that's annoying though is that notice when I fill in my information and I spend all this time, scroll down, and I try to hit save, all my values are getting reset. So that's pretty annoying. So the fix for that is Laravel gives us this little shortcut. We can go to the value of our input and use the old, it's a function called old, and it'll actually grab the old value and stick it inside the value of this text box. Last name. And then for the option item, this one's a little bit trickier because you're iterating over this long list, and how do you know which one is selected? Well, that takes a little bit more work. So within the option, there is a selected attribute that we can set. And so what we have to do here is inside the value, instead of just hard coding this selected, actually that's an attribute, selected attribute, we actually have to do a little bit of logic in here. So if the age option equals, we're going to use that old, then we want to say selected, otherwise do nothing. So we had to do a little bit of logic in there to make sure we generate that correctly. So let's save that, refresh, and I'm going to do test. I'm going to select one of these. And so this time when I store a friend, it preserves my values, preserves my selection. If I view HTML on this, notice I go through all the options, and next to 28 here it says selected. So it dynamically correctly selected the one that I wanted to be selected. So that's super, super handy. Okay, so last name. So now that all my validations are in place, I can display errors. I can go ahead and move forward and store and create more friends. Awesome. I think another little touch, another thing that we've been seeing in our controllers is we have this success message that we're not seeing. And I'm not sure if we're using it anywhere else yet, but we want to be able to display that after we create a friend. So it just kind of gives context to what's going on. So I'm going to jump back over into here, and I want that just to generically happen anytime we create a success. And so I'm going to add a little spot and do another little if. And so we have access to this session object. And we want to grab a success message out of it. And so if there's a success message, same kind of deal. We're going to use that toast, which is built into that Spectre framework. We already used the toast error, but now we're going to use toast success, which is green. And then we're going to print out that value. Cool. So let me save that, refresh. So let me go create a friend, new friend, store it. And now we get this nice friendly message at the top. Friend was created successfully. And that'll allow us to communicate those types of messages within our application, which is cool. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, now that we're creating, validating, displaying messages, we want to be able to delete a friend if we ever have to do that. So what I want to do now is just add another button or another form to do a deletion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another column. And over here, I need to create another form that allows us to do the deletion. And so this is going to go to friends destroy. Pretty destructive name. And but for our purposes it works. So yeah, we're going to send it to this route, send it the friend ID so that we know which friend to remove. And then this one is a little deceptive because the method on the form says post. And let me make sure I typed everything in correctly. But we actually are going to change the method to delete, which is the correct HTTP verb. And that's just kind of how HTML works. Like we have to just set it up as a post, but then Laravel says, go ahead and change the HTTP method to delete so that I know which action to call in your controller, which is the destroy action. And then we also, remember, we need to do that CSRF. to do that special token so that we can only delete from this form. And then I'm just going to create a button. And class, oops. Come on. And we're gonna use the error, but it's really just to kind of make it red so people, think twice before deleting. This is a submit form, and delete. So this should add that item to our view, and it does. So they each have their own delete, and if I push one, again, it does nothing. Okay. Well, it does nothing again because if we go back to our controller and go down to destroy, we're not doing anything yet, right? So we need to be able to handle this in our controller. So first thing we'll do is we'll look up that friend. By ID, we will delete them, and then we will redirect back to the index page. With that success message, friend was deleted. Cool. All right. So that's pretty much all there is for delete, right? You just look them up, delete them, go back. So let's go see if that works. Refresh, go back, and see if I can delete new friend. Looks like they're gone. We got our success message. If I refresh, yeah, they're still gone. Let's see if I can delete test last name. Yep, it looks like that's working. One other thing I recommend is that you don't just have free delete buttons available, because it's easy for people to kind of fat finger, or you're just kind of scrolling and you actually click buttons. That happens all the time. So I think I'm going to sprinkle in some JavaScript here, which is basically going to confirm before you delete. And so it's kind of one of them things you can plug in. As you get more sophisticated, if you get into like a JavaScript framework, you'll have better ways of handling this. But for now, this is just a nice little hack that'll protect somebody from just clicking on that delete button inadvertently. So the way we can do that is on our form, we have a, where are you form? Right here. We can do on submit, there's this handler that, well, before you submit this form, I want to confirm with you whether you really want to submit this or not. So I can give a message like, are you sure you want to delete? Right? And that just is a nice little snippet there that makes it, it allows the user to really think about it before they actually do it. So if I go back to here, refresh, and now I go to click one of these, I get this, are you sure you want to delete? And if I hit cancel, nothing happens. So it's a nice little JavaScript we can just sprinkle in there to make sure that if they really want to cancel or not. But if they do, sure, we'll let them. So they hit delete, are you sure you want to delete? And then they can hit OK. Boom, it happens. So I think it's a nice little touch. So in review, what we did today is we went over creating a resource. We set up some validation. We're able to display error messages. And also we went through and set up deleting a resource as well, being able to protect from just, inadvertently deleting a resource, and then also displaying like successful messages as well. So that's it for now. Until next time, have a good day. Bye.